Mine is LSU football at SEC Media Days yesterday. Brian Kelly took the podium first, along with three of his star players in Garrett Nussmeier, Whit Weeks, and Chris Hilton. I thought all three of the guys did an excellent job yesterday at the podium, answering questions and kind of discussing a lot of the things going into this season. Obviously, like Whit Weeks is probably one of my favorite people to watch get interviewed because I think he was at the podium for about 10 minutes or the table, and he was smiling from tip to tail the entire time. Whit Weeks had a smile on his face. And we'll start with the players first and then obviously get into some of the sound from Brian Kelly. I want to start with Whit Weeks talking about Harold Perkins, as that's going to be one of the biggest storylines going into the season. I did a NFL draft podcast last night. It's a week, like a daily NFL draft podcast. Like they go live every day talking about the NFL draft year round. And so they wanted to discuss LSU, so they messaged and had me on last night, and a lot of the discussion was around those two linebackers, and they discussed them as the best linebacking core in the country from an expectation standpoint, but obviously there's a lot put on Blake Baker and Harold Perkins to make sure he's in the right spot. But those two next to each other should be absolutely electric. So here's Whit Weeks talking about his linebacker mate, Harold Perkins.
On the field with your boy, Harold Perkins.
Oh, I can't wait. I cannot wait to be out there playing with Harold. He's the best football player, the best defensive college football player in the world. So being able to play with him, he makes it easy to be a good football player because you know he's going to be out there making plays, and you want to make plays for him too.
Yeah, I mean, look, the talent on Perkins is absolutely undeniable. And that's the reason why the expectations are as high as they are, because we've seen the talent at the highest level for Harold Perkins. It just comes down to where is he going to fit in. We've seen him as an on-ball edge rusher his freshman year, which obviously I don't think is his true natural position, but he should still rush the passer because he's extremely skilled and talented. And we've seen him as an off-ball linebacker, and he showed some flashes in coverage, but can kind of get eaten up in some of those run fits. But I think those two next to each other, and I think I said this on that show last night, if the LSU defense reaches its ceiling, if it's as good as it can be, it's going to be because those two guys are on the field together playing off of each other at the highest level. And you heard Whit Weeks talk about Perk, and he said that is the best defensive player in college football. And it's easy to want to play next to him. And I am so excited to watch those two on the field together because they're two of the best in the country. And that was the discussion last night around those two guys. Are they both top 50 players in the draft? And I think 1,000%. And like I said, if this LSU defense is going to be what it's expected to be, it's going to be because of those two guys. And so I'm excited to watch them next to each other. Yes?
I have the longer cut if you want that.
Okay, run it.
I cannot wait to be out there playing with Harold. He's the best football player, the best defensive college football player in the world. So being able to play with him, he makes it easy to be a good football player because you know he's going to be out there making plays, and you want to make plays for him too.
Right side, second row.
Alex Byington on 3. Wait, you can talk about Harold, but he's dealt with a lot of injuries over his career, came in 5-star kind of kid. How have you seen him adjust to that, and where's the limit for him right now?
The sky's the limit for Harold. He's the best athlete I've probably ever seen in my whole life. So if you let Harold be Harold, he'll be a superstar. And it's not going to be hard for him to be a superstar.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it better myself. Like he's a freak athlete, one of the best in the world just from an athletic standpoint. And like Whit said, if you just let him be that, it's going to make the LSU defense better. LSU will be better for it. And that's going to be the storyline going in, is where does he fit in? Is the star position going to be the spot? I think it is because it's going to allow him to just be an athlete and be a football player, use his instincts, and be able to be off the ball or rush the quarterback when he needs to or when it's right, those sorts of things, and then allow Witt to be that guy in the middle of the field that's working sideline to sideline with his hair on fire, smiling ear to ear, and just having a good time, man. It's going to be fun. Spectrum will care. Let Perk be Perk. Ain't that hard. I agree. And like the conversation about NFL, whatever, what I told the guys when they were, trying to get, some information on Perk when it comes to the draft, I said what needs to happen is Harold Perkins doesn't need to play a position next season that's going to get him drafted. It's him showing off everything that makes him special. A defensive coordinator and a head coach in the NFL are going to say, hey, that guy runs a 4.3 as a linebacker and is that talented in coverage and at rushing the quarterback and all these different things. They're going to take him early. So Harold Perkins is going to help boost the ceiling, and the way him and Whit Weeks are going to play next to each other is beyond important for LSU. Absolutely dominated the football game. Well, and I think a lot with that 2022 defense that's similar to now,
Right.
is he's not the only one. In 2023, you had to circle two guys. You circled you circled the interior defensive line with Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo, and then Harold Perkins, and that was it. You didn't circle anybody else on that defense, really. Now, and I talked about Patrick Payton last night. That's why you go get him to be your guy off the edge. You have a Gabe Relaford. You have those defensive tackles like Sadir Mitchell, Jacoby and Guillory, Don McKinley, Ahmad Bro. Go down the list, Bernard Gooden. You have Whit Weeks. You have West Weeks. You have Devon Keys. You have the defensive backs, A.J. Halsey, Mansour Delane. You went out and got those guys so that now all the pressure is not on number 7's shoulders. Like, you can't just circle Perk on this defense next year and make it like, yes, you're going to make your game plan if you're a defense around Harold Perkins, number 7 for LSU. That obviously, that can't be the end of it because they've got too much talent now around him that your focus can't strictly be Harold Perkins like it was in 23. Because in 2023, in my opinion, every opposing offense just circled number 4 and said, if we take him out of the game, we run away from him, we do this, that, and the other.
Don't let him beat you.
Right. It's not going to be the same story this year. So the defensive expectations start with number 40 and number 7, or maybe potentially
18.
Number 18 and number 7.
And you never really got to see them on the field together.
Right.
Like, there were spots whenever they both played at the same time, but the emergence of Whit Weeks came after the injury to Harold Perkins, where he was thrust into, you're playing every down.
Right. Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Arkansas.
And you saw him in spots against USC, where Weeks is out there, Perkins is out there, but Whit almost gets a pick. Like, he was like, I can't believe it. It was, in slow motion, it was almost too easy for me to be able to make that play. And then you fast forward to the Arkansas game where he's tipping it to himself, catching it, shotgunning it, and spinning it in the end zone and getting a proud papa. Like, that's the form of Weeks I expect to see. And to see Perk a little bit, like you said, having people on every level of the defense you have to be concerned about as opposed to just 7, that's going to make a massive difference for his impact. And it also could cut into his impact.
Right.
Because he's not asked to do too much, but in the same thing, like, you'll be able to get a Perk that gets to play so much more free.
Yes. And it's going to make, like, Patrick Payton's going to be better for it. Like, my opinion, last year, Braden Swinson was better for it.
Yeah.
You're game planning for Harold Perkins. Guess what? I've got an NFL defensive end that's running right at you, And so I think that the defense next season, the expectations should be high. And it's crazy to say that because you haven't seen it so far, really, under Brian Kelly. 2022 was a good defense. But outside of that, 2023 obviously abysmal. Last season was not the best. Like, there were some highs, but the lows were low. I mean, Jalen Milroe, Marcel Reed, like, those lows were low. So on to the offense, kind of turning the page. I want to hear Chris Hilton speak a little bit. And here is Chris talking about Garrett Nussmeier and his leadership. And then we'll also play the clip of Chris talking about the wide receiver room. Because Chris Hilton, like BK said, and like we talked about a little bit yesterday, is obviously one of the leaders in that room. That's why he got invited to media days. It was crazy when I did that podcast last night. They didn't talk about Hilton at all or really ask about Chris. Like they asked about Nick Anderson, Aaron Anderson, Barry and Brown, of course, but that was it on the wide receiver front. I was like, hey, guys, I'm just going to let y'all know now. There's a name that y'all are not touching on that you should be. Like, you're going to hear Chris Hilton's name a whole lot when you get to the nitty-gritty of draft season. When you get to January, February, March into April, Chris Hilton's name is going to be said a good bit. And here's Hilton talking about QB1 as well as the wide receiver room at LSU.
Position this year. I would say the biggest thing I've seen from him is he took a big step being a leader, like more of a vocal leader that's leading, like not just leading the offense, but leading the whole team. And the sky's the limit for him. Like he can do whatever he want to do as long as he continues to put the work in.
Like right now.
So I heard about that this morning. You know what I'm saying? I hope he's okay. But adding them to the room is not going to do anything but, I don't want to say this, make us more dynamic, right? Said this in previous interviews. You would think it would cause problems, but it's not because we have so many weapons. Like you try to put emphasis on one of us, you still got to worry about two others, right? And if you somehow find a way to guard two of us, you still got a third you got to worry about. So,
Like right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the expectations lie offensively. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier is now going to have an entire offseason to sit back, look at film, dissect. You know, he talked about it yesterday. He's gone back and watched that Texas A&M game, specifically that first interception where it kind of all fell down from there, a million times. Like, that's the first time he's been able to really sit back and watch film and dissect it. And the expectations are high because of him. But that wide receiver room, like I really sat down yesterday and kind of dissected it before I talked about them a good bit. The talent in that room is special. Like, and I don't think I'm breaking any news by saying that. But from a standpoint of you have Aaron Anderson returning, who was one of Nussmeier's, if not his go-to target last season. You saw it in some of the biggest games. It was Lacey and Anderson. In the biggest games, it was Lacey and Anderson. Mm-hmm. And some, Mason Taylor as well. But from a wide receiver standpoint, South Carolina went to Aaron Anderson multiple times. Ole Miss, Aaron Anderson multiple times. Like, down the stretch of games, that was his guy. UCLA, it was third and Anderson in that first half. Like, every big third down, Nuss targeted number one. That's where it starts. Then you then you have Chris Hilton, who you saw what you got in the last two games of the season against Oklahoma and Baylor. Like, as good as it gets when he's on the field. LSU is a completely different team with Chris Hilton on the field. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You saw it last season, how different they looked against Oklahoma and Baylor than they did earlier in the year because Hilton was back on the field. Barry and Brown, Xavier Thomas, Nick Anderson, somebody that's different. You got all this speed. Now guess what? You've got 6'4", 200, whatever. That's going to be a red zone threat, a big body that can catch it over the middle. Like, you've built this room to make Nussmeier even more successful. You have added wide receivers that just give him more toys, more tools.
6'4", 220.
Like, somebody that's different than the rest of the room, because that's what you needed. You've got Barry and Brown, speedster, Xavier Thomas, speed, Aaron Anderson, speed. You've got Chris Hilton, speed. Go down the list. What did you need? You need a big body that can catch it over the middle of the field, that can get you the jump ball in the red zone, that can run that goal line fade, catch it back shoulder. In traffic, you went and got that Nick Anderson. Like Chris said, hey, you can game plan for all of us. You can take away two of us. There's still a third or fourth receiver out there. You can't game plan for everybody. And so from a PR standpoint, we're really boosting it right now because it's really hard not to. It just, you could feel the confidence from the guys when they were talking about this team, consistently repeating how close of a group they are, the brotherhood that they are. Like, it's hard to not get excited. I think that's where my anxiety came from yesterday, listening to it, was because the confidence that all four of them, BK, Nuss, Witt, and Hilton, spoke with, instilled excitement and expectations, and that in turn turned into anxiety of, like, I mean, if they're this excited about it, like, I haven't felt this good going into, you know, it's hard to feel good going into a year because we've been let down, especially the last, 5 seasons. So we're going to get to some of the sound from Brian Kelly. Don't forget, every single day we are brought to you by AJ Sports Cards. You see the boxes of cards here right in front of me. AJ Sports Cards is based out of Baton Rouge, right off of Drusilla Lane, 3348 Drusilla Lane, and their phone number is 225-831-4508. They've got a great collection of cards if you're a collector, but they've also got collectibles and merchandise. They've got stuff like signed jerseys, signed cards, signed photos, all these different things from LSU athletes, professional athletes, but they have such a cool collection of LSU athletes things. If you don't know, if you're a card collector or you're interested, or you just want some cool LSU collectibles, I would suggest heading over to AJ Sports Cards. Just go check it out. Even if you're not going in with a plan to purchase anything, just walk in, check out what they've got. You'll go through the door. What I want you to do is turn right to your left and look at the kind of shadow box they have of LSU memorabilia. Check that out because you'll probably end up wanting to leave with something. So head over to AJ Sports Cards, 3348 Drusilla Lane, and let them know you heard about them here on Tingle Co. in the mornings. So, Andrew Messina, I do not want to see Nuss drop back and throw 50 times. Yep, that is the hope, is that won't happen. As much as you've added wide receiver help, and rightfully so, you wanted to give Nussmeier more weapons. You don't want Nuss to be a 50 drop back guy. The run game is more important than all of that. Like Messina said, if they can't run the ball consistently, it's going to be very frustrating each Saturday. I agree. E-Dub, I think the offensive success will hinge on LSU changing its running scheme. Got to do more than shotgun inside zone. Yes, you've got to get away from the zone read running the ball. Like the running game, the running scheme being built around the zone read was great when you had Jaden Daniels in the backfield because he was going to pull it and run it for 50 yards into the end zone, or pull it and dump it off to Mason Taylor, or he was a threat of pulling it and it made the holes for Caleb Jackson and Logan Diggs massive running through the line. That cannot be the case anymore. You saw it fail last year when you try to do zone read runs with Nussmeier back there. You can mix it in, of course. That can't be the structure of your run game. It just can't. And we talked about it a whole lot last season. It cannot be. Like E-Dub said, run schemes have to be more diverse. I agree. And that's where these weapons that you've brought in come into play. I think you're going to see Xavier Thomas mixed in a good bit back there. You're going to see Barry and Brown, tunnel screens, all these end arounds, touch passes, all these sorts of things that you can do that simulate the run game. All of that's going to be used. All of those things add to the run game. RPOs, like I'm kind of in the mindset of EA College Football 26 right now, of like it's got to be hard to guard an inside zone RPO where it's either handing it off to Caden Durham or pulling it and dumping it off to Barry and Brown or Xavier Thomas or Aaron Anderson with blockers in front of them. That's where the excitement from an offensive standpoint can come from when you talk about these weapons. So we're going to get into some of the sound from Brian Kelly. We'll start with him talking about Garrett Nussmeier going into his second year, and then follow that up with BK talking about the defense and the struggles that they've had the last couple of seasons, and where they see that kind of improving. Because I listened to, on the way here this morning, I listened to last year's SEC Media Days, And it was a lot of talk about being balanced and talking about taking the step forward from a defensive standpoint. And I believe they did. They took a step forward last year, but it was not the journey was not complete. You went from you were no longer the worst defense in the country. You have to take another step forward. And so this is going to be BK talking about the step forward for his quarterback going into year 2, but also his defense under the call of Blake Baker in year 2.
Question, Emily. I would say that when you're comparing him to Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow, that's a high bar for anybody, right? But Garrett is at LSU because he loves LSU and he wants to lead our football team to a championship. And if the Heisman falls with that, I think he's good with that. But I answer the question this way is because all of our conversations with him aren't about individual goals. They're about how do I lead this football team to a championship? And all we've seen is him leading, him being selfless. And his selflessness is going to be the differentiator from last year to this year, as well as the experience that he had playing against really good SEC teams.
Coach, we're going
Yeah, I mean, you cannot underestimate and underplay how important it is to have all of that experience. Like, as much as it's good from a standpoint of getting to sit back and watch film and understand what you did wrong and what you need to grow on, you also now are more comfortable in environments. There's no more, I'm seeing these things for the first time. That's gone. Like, Jaden Daniels, when he got here his first year, he saw a lot of things for the first time. Joe Burrow, when he played his first season at LSU, saw a lot of things for the first time. And I'm not trying to compare them as players, but from a standpoint of career path, it's similar. Garrett Nussmeier saw a lot of things for the first time last season. He's been around the program. He's seen different things, and that's why his first year was more successful than theirs, where he throws for 4,000 yards and has the success offensively. But now he still saw a lot of things for the first time. He played on Kyle Field for the first time with those fans screaming at him. He dropped back and threw the ball 50 times for the first time. That's not going to be the case anymore. Hopefully he doesn't have to drop back 50 times anymore. But this season, it won't be any firsts. I won't say there won't be any firsts, but there won't be as many firsts for Garrett Nussmeier in 2025 because of the experience he gained last season. And speaking of last season moving into this year, like I said, Blake Baker will be leading the defense for the second year. And BK talked about him, said he was an elite defensive coordinator. He will be leading this defense for the second year. And last year you saw the improvement, but what was kind of the one thing when we kind of talked about, we say he didn't really have the horses in totality, the depth. They went out and they added that. Here's BK talking about his defense going into 2025.
Well, I think we've got an outstanding defensive coordinator and a defensive staff. Blake Baker is in my opinion, elite in the field of defensive coordinators. We needed to give him some more tools. And look, I've been the head football coach at LSU, and I know that we have not played the kind of defense necessary to win a national championship. I think we put a roster together in this offseason, along with young players that have taken lumps along the way as they've developed, and given Blake now the tools to play championship level defense. Because clearly, the 2023 offensive football team we had was good enough to win a national championship. We weren't good enough as a team, and a lot of that had to do with addressing some shortcomings we had on defense. We think we've done that. I love our roster. I love our team and the way they interact, the camaraderie of our group, the seriousness and focus, their intent. So I think we're going to have a defense that is going to be representative. And look, anytime you go on the road and play a team like Clemson, you better bring a defense with you.
we'll start it right there. You're going to find out a lot about your defense week 1 when you face off against Cade Klubnik, who is in that conversation with Nussmeier of the best quarterback in the country. But from a defensive standpoint, one of the pieces I really liked what he said was talking about the younger guys that are still on this defense that have been here. Javian Toviano, Ashton Stamps, Deshaun Spears. Now, the linebacking core like Devon Keys and Tylen Singleton and Kalaj Cobbins. Guys that might not see the field, all that much. They're not going to be, in that starting 11 if I were to map out what I think it is right now, except maybe Stamps. But they got that experience early on. Like you saw the growth for Ashton Stamps from year 1 to year 2, from getting kind of thrown into the fire against Ole Miss and Alabama in year 1 in 2023 to being a full-time guy and leading the SEC in pass deflections last season, pass breakups last year. You saw the growth. Taviano didn't get all that much run last year, had some of the off-the-field issues. They've still tried to find a position for him. Those guys are now especially Toviano, like depth pieces, in my opinion. Like now, you went out, you brought in A.J. Halsey to Marcus Cooley. If you wouldn't have brought those guys in, Toviano's a starting safety for your team. Well, you go out and get those guys, you're going to bring them in to be starting guys, to be your top-end safeties. But you have Taviano back there as a depth piece that's still going to get run, still serve a role. The depth is what, in my opinion, has grown astronomically from a defensive standpoint. As much as you've gotten better top end, where you bring in guys that like 8 of your 11 on defense are going to be transfer portal players. When you talk about Mansour Delane, Patrick Payton, Sadir Mitchell, Jack Pyburn, Tamarcus Cooley, A.J. Halsey, Bernard Gooden, like a lot of guys are going to be guys that didn't play for LSU last season. But the growth that you hope to see in the guys that were here last year is why your depth is in such a better place. Taviano, Spears, even guys like Ahmad Bro and Dominic McKinley, Gabe Relaford, Devon Keys, Tylen Singleton, Ashton Stamps, P.J. Woodland, like all of these guys were guys that you expected to end up being your top guys on defense this season before you went out and made these portal commitments, these portal additions. Now you bring in the top-end talent, and you still have those guys that you expected to play huge roles to be depth pieces and still serve in a very important role for this defense. That's where the confidence comes from. And the other thing is, like Ahmad Bro talked about, it's a second year in his system, in Blake Baker's system, where they get to understand the jargon a little bit better. They understand the playbook better. It allows them to play faster and freer. One of the terms that was used a lot by those draft analysts that I was talking to last night when talking about some of the LSU players was overly aggressive. When they talked about Whit Weeks, they said that he plays with his hair on fire, which he does, but he can be overly aggressive in his pursuit angles and can take bad angles because of that, or can get kind of caught up in run fits or different sorts of things. When they talked about A.J. Halsey, big-time safety, plays really well against the run, can disrupt passing lanes, but can be overly aggressive. Mansour Delane can be overly physical and aggressive. These are just some of the terms those guys used to talk about this defense. And I said, well, guys, I get from an NFL draft standpoint the term overly aggressive or the way they play, that style of play might not be conducive to a draft scout standpoint. I was like, but from Blake Baker's standpoint and the way he wants to construct this defense, you want to talk about wreaking havoc, you want aggressive guys back there. You want smart and aggressive guys back there. And that's what Mansour Delane is, experienced. That's what A.J. Halsey is, experienced. Whit Weeks. That's what you saw the most improvement from Weeks from his freshman year. A lot of the reason why he didn't get as much run as a freshman was because he could be overly aggressive, and he had to kind of calm down a little bit. You saw him grow astronomically, where he had 120 tackles last year. And so he's going to still have that aggression. It's going to be a smart aggression, a tactical aggression. Harold Perkins, aggression. Like the havoc and the aggression that this defense is going to have is because Blake Baker has now structured it in the way that fits him. And like Ahmad Bro said, their understanding of him and his defense allows for them to play free. Take some of the pressure off of their shoulders. No longer having to stress about where do I fit in? What do I do here? What does that mean? What does this mean? We now understand. We've seen it. We know what you mean when you say this, that, and the other. We can play free and cause havoc. Make plays that are there to be made. And now, make plays that aren't there to be made. Because that was the thing we talked about last season, right, Lloyd? We said the one thing you wanted to see from the defense is be in the right spots, no longer have all these bad missed assignments that you saw in 23, and make the play that is there to be made. And I think they did a relatively good job on that. There obviously were some missteps against A&M and Alabama. Now it's going to be in the right spots, which I think they did a great job of last year. Like just from a 23 to 24 standpoint, it was such an improvement from being in the right place. Now you need to be in the right place. You should always make the play that's there to be made. And now the next step is you want to have guys that are going to make the play that's not always there to be made. Like, be a playmaker. Go make the play happen. Jump the passing lane if you're Mansour Delane or A.J. Halsey. Go get the quarterback if you're Harold Perkins. Blow up the interior of that offensive line if you're Sadir Mitchell. Like, now be in the right spot, make the play that's there for you to make, but then also go make the play yourself.
Just to highlight the change from Matt House's last year to Blake Baker being added, LSU's defense in 2023. LSU ranked 108th nationally in yards per play allowed. Can't happen. 113th in turnovers. Can't happen. And 91st in yards per run allowed. Can't happen. 2024, top 60 scoring defense that Baker looks to build on in year two. So obviously you went from a team that was 113th in turnovers to a team that was top 60 in scoring.
Right.
Like, you saw the changes happen on the field. I don't think they were a dynamic defensive unit.
Right.
I don't think it was something that you're like, hey, LSU, go get you a stop right here. Like, you're scared of the defense. Or I think they played good assignment football, and I think we've all watched enough college football to know that offense usually beats defense. And if you're able to get a couple of stops, that's where the game can change. Like, LSU did, Arkansas, I'll go back to, was their best game of the year. Whenever they consistently were getting off the field on third down and turning that ball back over to the offense, that's where LSU can take you out of a football game, because they're so, I guess, offensively they can control the clock, and they did that so well against Arkansas, where they kind of found a little bit of their run game. Caden Durham always goes for 100 yards.
Right.
And you were able to control the clock and trust your defense, where you didn't have to sprint down the field and get into a scoring match like you had to do in previous years,
Right.
where if you give up 50, you had to score 51. And it felt like there were parts of that defense and parts of that year where the LSU defense was playing so well that you could see that they could rely on them a little bit. Everything up until the A&M second half,
Right.
you felt really good about where your defense was pointing and the direction it was trending. And yes, they still gave up some big plays, but some of that was what the offense did to put you in those situations. So it ended up kind of being short fields, things like that. And then obviously you have the outlier of the Alabama game where nothing went right.
Right.
And that is hopefully over, because it does, as much as we harp on it being like a running quarterback that LSU can't stop, it seemed to just be one running quarterback that LSU couldn't stop. Like, DJ Lagway didn't perform especially well. He was, 12 for 25
Right.
against LSU. Marcel Reed came in, and it was 3 plays that changed the outcome of that football game. And so the defense was relatively, I would say, okay. They weren't the worst in the league.
No, not at all.
And it shows how much more competitive you could be. If you had that defense in 23, you win a national championship.
Yeah.
And so
away.
you're trying to find that balance. And with Nussmeier, you have to feel good about what the offense is going to do. And I would feel that way almost regardless of who they had added. Like, if you don't get Berrien Brown or Nick Anderson or Bauer Sharp, you would still feel good about the LSU offense because of who's leading it.
Right.
Now you give him all of those weapons, you start to feel really good about what the LSU offense can do. And not only from adding weapons from an offensive perspective, but from a defensive perspective, and giving Blake Baker more things to work with, which is what they needed improvement on the most. You went out and got players that are going to come in and start. Day one, not a question mark at positions of need, and so they'll have the talent, and it feels like they have the coaching on the defensive side. So to say it's that went from a concern to a strength.
Right. And that's the craziest thing, is that it is now talked about, including me and you right now, as a strength. Like that you've turned the page like that. You made the improvement from 23 to 24, then now expect what it's going to be from 24 to 25. I would go out on a limb and say that I think this is going to be a top 20 defense, which I don't think is a crazy hot take. Like, I think LSU is going to put out a top 20 defense this season in 2025 because of the pieces they've added, the things that we said, like Ahmad Bro said, understanding Baker, knowing the terminology, knowing the playbook better, being able to play fast and free and cause havoc. I think it's a top 20 defense, and I'd say top 15 defensive unit because of the pieces they've added and just the freedom that they